evening.
Set a population of police officers.
Right.
Well, killer, maybe. Killer. Hey, Mark. Chris, Mark. Good to see you guys. Glad you're here. I'm speaking to you a little bit. You guys let me know what I say wrong. I'm sure it won't take before the end of the speech. You're ready, man. You're all armed and ready to let your voices be heard. All right, okay, well, then I'm going to probably call you for help, man. All right, good to see you guys. Say hello to everybody. Hi, Mark Hutchison. Good to meet you guys.
Mike's from out from Moab.
Oh, good.
Spends his summers in Wyoming. Idaho.
Well, Idaho.
If you can imagine.
Moab and you cut Logan down.
We don't go on that side.
You don't go on that side of the
That
freeway?
side of the island first.
My brother was a police officer out there for years. Jeff was out there forever. Yeah, Jeff Hutchison. Police officer out there about 10 years before he retired.
He's retired.
Before that, yeah, he was a
young guy.
Oh, I know.
That's probably an attraction. He's retired.
It's so true. Until you go try to run for public office, and it's like, it's worse to be tired.
Yeah.
You can't even keep up with what you're supposed to do.
We really appreciate you coming.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So how much are you calling about?
The master of ceremonies, the director of all.
Mark Hutchison.
All right.
Good. Oh yeah. Everything all right? Yep. I have it. You know what I say?
Scott, how you doing? Good. Scott, you Larry Bird? Way back. How are you doing? At the same time. And then his dad was Dr. Spring, his next leader. Or what?
Sometimes when the stars align,
Tough choice.
Larry Burns. We're county sheriff. I am. I still have sheriff's station. Oh yeah, I got a big phone.
Good, I'm glad you came back again.
Got a chance. Never worked there. Went to all my career in the city. Worked a lot for a lot of years.
Keep your hat down and awesome. Thanks for coming. Okay. How you doing?
Hi, Mike Reese, I'm president of the coalition. And you are Rosky? Yes. Okay. And who are you with? I'm with the
Oh, you're awesome. Okay. Got any questions? Bring them up. It's an open forum. Nothing's off the table. So all we're really here is educating some of the people what goes on and how it's going on.
Very cool. While I'm here, while you're talking,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody has. I'm going to put it on Facebook.
Everything is on. We got cameras on your cell phone.
We as sportsmen have nothing to hide. So, I mean, we just want to stick to the facts, no emotion. It's just this is it. So are you here in Vegas?
Yes.
Do you work for anybody in particular office or do you have a card?
I don't have a card.
Okay, because I just went and met with Vinny, Spottle Center over in Reed's office.
Yeah, he's actually my neighbor.
Is he?
He once was.
Okay, there's my card, and Henry Reed sent me a nice thank you for coming and sitting and meet with him. So a lot of stuff I'm going to discuss here, I've kind of already discussed it with you. We're a nonpartisan group. I mean, most of the guys tonight are Republican, but we still step out to the Democrats and say, okay,
You're just
look,
about wildlife.
we're wildlife and firearms. Firearms as far as it pertains to, hey, I want to go deer hunting. Well, I got to take my gun. Now, what legally, what can I do? What can I get? It's not the fanatics or nothing. It's basically the sporting families in Nevada is what it is. But we also represent recreational shooters. So in that vein, we do represent a lot of firearm owners and stuff. So, okay?
Well, nice to meet you.
Okay, man. Thank you. And you don't have a card?
No, I don't. I should probably get
Okay, man. Thank you.
Anyway, there's one of those things.
Hi. Hi, I'm Chris.
Chris, Larry Burns. I'm the Clark County Sheriff.
Yeah.
Got a kind of different viewpoint of the Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, like I've seen some.
But you'll pull them up, and we'll be on television more as time goes forward. And we get more information, a chance to know who we are and what we're all about. But I'm here for a few minutes tonight. I'm going to run over the UNLV game. I've got a piece over there, but I wanted to give you a chance to meet the group, and I'm very passionate when it comes to hunting and fishing.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Larry Burns. Nice to meet you. Clark County Sheriff. I'll give you my card. You'll see more of us in the future. If you follow that race, you have any questions, give me a call.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. How you doing?
Good, how you doing?
Larry Burns. Like Yeah, they did full 96% of full large number, obviously. So Jefferson County is an organization. I'm more of a county sensitive passion. I've been spent a lot of but I'm just
How you doing?
So the cops know what I represent. Oh, I need a haircut. You bring your.
Okay. Oh, I guess I thought. I'm going to let these guys finish up talking, and we're going to go and have a seat and get started. Okay, can all you out there hear pretty good on this? Okay, let me, the speakers are going to be here tonight. This battery cuts in and out, so just keep it close to you and it'll keep on going. Okay, welcome. My name is Mike Reese. I am the president of Southern Nevada Coalition for Wildlife. And I'm honored that all you guys found time to come on out tonight. I do realize it wasn't the greatest night. We've got some of our lawmakers up here, and I'll let you guys know this. You guys can probably hear me well enough. Tonight, the Fraternity Desert Bighorn meeting was tonight. The league shooting out of Clark County Shooting Park is going on. There's 20 teams, so there was 100 guys out there shooting tonight. So don't think that people aren't interested in this or say, hey, could you move the date and stuff. So we had two things to contend with: these guys' schedules and being able to get this room. Ron Lurie helped us secure this room free of charge. So if you guys know Ron, we're going to go down and we're going to eat in the steakhouse probably tomorrow night and tell him thank you for allowing us to hold this room. There's a couple outside of some of our lawmakers. I want to introduce some of the groups that we represent. As you see our banner up here, basically what we're about is we preserve Nevada's wildlife heritage through political action. That's why we have you guys here. Education and conservation. Okay, the educating portion of this is making some of our lawmakers aware of some of the potential bills, laws, how it'll affect us, how it won't affect us. If you do that, how it will help us. Maybe it will work. I brought a couple of interesting things tonight. I'm going to let you guys take these home. And what this is the economic impact that the sporting families have had in Southern Nevada. 2011, fiscal year 2011, sporting families in Nevada contributed to Nevada's economy $409 million. Okay, it sounds like a lot, but the number that these people want to hear is 38 million of it was in sales tax. It went straight into their coffers for them to divvy up and use throughout the entire state. So that's a huge number. I want to remind you guys, this is 2011. We had our highest unemployment Las Vegas and Nevada has ever seen. You could not find ammo on the shelves anywhere, and you could not find guns. If everybody can speculate on what it would have turned out if we'd had a good year. The figures for 2012 and 13 are not out yet. But this is actually a lot of money, but it's the low point. This stuff is all verifiable, okay, on here. And I'm going to do a Reader's Digest version of this real quick. I think you guys have seen this. It sounds like a lot of money. As we all know, we got 50 states in the United States. Nevada ranked 45th in sportsman contribution to money. Okay? Part of the reason we're meeting here tonight is to find out, how do we get that number up? What do we do? Why are we 45th? we got 87% of our land is BLM. Well, part of it comes through the restrictions that get placed on. It seems every year more and more restrictions get added on, and it's basically in terms of saying, let's close the cash register a little bit tighter. We don't need that much money in there, and this has been a result of that. And we were hoping, we figured with as much land as we have, we should be ranking a lot higher than what we do. Okay, I'm going to go in and introduce some of our organization. On our board, Bill Daniels, if you'll stand up. Bill Daniels is the manufacturer's representative for white flyer targets. So all those clay pigeons that you see of all these places going on, Bill happens to live here in Las Vegas, but he's traveled all around the country, and he even owned his own gun club back in the Willows, back in Louisiana and stuff. Bill, anything you want to say?
Just that not only am I an active recreational shooter on the range, that my wife, my kids, we all are active hunters in this state. We all apply for tags and spend a lot of time out in the woods. We love living here.
Yeah, he moved here from back east. So let's see, in the last year you've had deer tags, you've had elk tags in the state. So you do try to hunt mainly around here, but you have hunted in other states. Yes, last year, or year before, you went up to Alaska on a couple of trips and stuff. So thanks. Bill DeJunker's right up front. Bill, why don't you go ahead and stand on up real quick. Bill is the current president and has been a president of WHIN. That's WHIN, Wildlife Habitat Improvement for Nevada. You've been president for them for what? 3.5 years. They're getting ready to have a banquet in about a week and a half. Last year's banquet had, what, 350 people? So when you start talking about stimulating the economy, there's a ton of money that changes hands at those. Whether it's the NBU's banquet, Las Vegas Woods and Waters had theirs last weekend. We had 240 people attend that. Bill was one of the lucky winners of some raffle gifts too. Okay, let me go through here. John, you want to go ahead and stand up? John is the current vice president of Nevada Trappers. And you've been with the Nevada Trappers for how long?
20 years.
20 years. Got a ton of knowledge when it comes to trapping. Not just in Nevada, but in the western states. How far north have you gone, John?
I got pulled over by the Border Patrol last fall on the Canadian border.
Okay.
Which side?
Yeah.
On the American side.
So,
American
John,
Border Patrol.
anything you want to add?
I really appreciate you all here, Crescent and Mark, and this organization, the coalition, I'm a huge supporter of. It's been in existence a short time, about a year and a half, and it brings together all the hunting and conservation, hunting, fishing, traffic conservation organizations. Organizations tend to be very specific to a cause or a species of animals, to betterment for bighorn sheep or ducks unlimited or mule deer foundation. Or it tends to be a fairly narrow focus. And the groups don't do a tremendous job when it comes to political action. So we saw a need. There's a group like this. There's a coalition in northern Nevada that does a really good job taking care of that situation up there. And now we have it going on in southern Nevada. We have very active hunting, fishing community, a whole lot of groups that do very good things, that do specific things. And now this group, Mike's group, brings it all together with the purpose of political action and making sure hunting, fishing regulations, laws, statutes are ones that we can support, and very active in lobbying and public relations and all that stuff. So it's a niche that hasn't been filled very well until now, and I'm just delighted that Mike has stepped up and is bringing all the groups together, for this purpose.
Thanks, John. Back over here we have Richard Pabst. Richard, what's your actual take with Rocky Mountain Elk Valley? I call him the head chairman guy.
Well, I am the Las Vegas chapter chair.
Okay.
So we've been around, and we're going to have our 27th annual banquet. So this group has been active in the community for quite a long time. We're outdoors, men and women. I like to think about the bumper sticker from Southern Nevada Coastal Wildlife. We hunt, we fish, we trap. Most importantly, we vote. And our people come out and vote. We're not sideline people. We're going to be out there. We're going to be out there for those people who understand our way of life, our interests, our family traditions, and our state traditions. So when you look at this group here, this is generally people who are on the side, and we can be counted on at the goal.
Thanks, Richard. Sitting next to Richard is Gordon Warren. You probably didn't know I was going to introduce him. He sits on the board for the Nevada Firearms Coalition. Gordon, anything you want to say?
Yes, this organization has been around for about 3 years. We have 300 individual members, and there are 49 hunting, fishing, and shooting clubs that belong to us. We've recently organized a PAC that will lobby in the legislature, and we closely watch the votes of various legislators and testify before them on certain issues that concern them. We're also involved in conservation activities, and usually this involves arguing with the Nevada Division of Wildlife about various matters. Thanks, man.
Okay. And as I get back to Neil Johnson. Neil, you want to stand up for a second? Neil actually represents the recreational shooters of Southern Nevada. He's co-owner with Gage Shooting Academy. Neil, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Been shooting competitively for 54 years. Hosting some events out at the Clark County Shooting Range. We have one coming up at the end of the month that we already have 138 participants signed up for. We're holding hosting a large Western Regional tournament at the Sporting Clay Course in Clark County the first weekend of October, which should exceed 400 shooters.
Yeah, and I might add, Neil was very instrumental in bringing what's called, it's traditionally been known as a zone shoot. They now call it a regional. That the 7 western states, they're holding their big shoot right here at our $60 million shooting facility in Clark County. There's probably, well, the Ducks Unlimited was just here 3 weeks ago, and they had close to 450 shooters. We're hoping to reach that or do it. This isn't a one-day event. This is 4 and a 5-day event coming into town. So it's like a convention comes down and helps stimulate the economy and stuff. So these are guys just shooting shotguns and and shooting it, but they practice. An average shooter, Neil, what would you say? I know that when I was shooting competitively, I was shooting say 10,000 targets a year. It sounds like a lot, but the events are 100 target events. Bill Daniel sitting next to him can tell you how many guys in the industry shoot 20, 30,000 targets in a year. It's tons of money that changes hands. Neil, who do you know of here in this town that probably shoots the most amount of targets in the valley outside of you?
You can say me probably.
Yeah.
I shoot about 25,000 rounds a year.
Okay.
Probably there's a handful of us here in Southern Nevada, another handful up in Northern Nevada. So there's probably 25 to 30 of us in Nevada that shoot that many rounds.
Yeah.
And we got an awful lot of people that just come out to have some fun. They don't do the competitive stuff as much. They're out there at the gun clubs. I'm teaching a lot of kids. I got a 90-year-old girl that doesn't weigh 80 pounds. And I'm teaching how to shoot and play targets. We've got several teenagers that I'm teaching. So that's what we do.
Right. And what Neil does is he teaches the same event that's held at the Olympics. They just don't advertise it. And everybody has been trying to figure out, how do we get the advertising and stuff on this. So Neil, thank you for doing what you do. I've kind of saved the best for last. Back in the very back row, we've got some young kids, part of the Warner family stuff. They wanted to do a presentation. Do you want to come on up here? Okay, you want to get your camera ready, please? I don't have a mic on, so I'm going to let you speak pretty loud. Okay.
Well, we had our first banquet this year, and we raised a lot of money for wildlife, and we wanted to present Southern Nevada Wildlife Coalition this check.
Got it? You want to do one more?
Yeah, I'll do one more of this one too.
Okay.
Sure.
Hold up, level. Come on, kid.
There we go. Oh, that's
Okay. Guys, thank you. You go ahead and take this back. Appreciate it. They're actually with Nevada Sportsman's Unlimited, brand new group that just started, and they're concentrating a lot on the youth as well as other things. But these are the groups, along with WIN, that is boots on the ground. They're the ones that are going to go put the habitat in, the water development in, the feed in, duck blind. I mean, you name it. They partner with Endow and say, how do we help? What can we do? We'll supply us with some of the money, with the manpower, and you just let us know how we could be beneficial to Nevada's wildlife, and we'll step in and help. So thanks you guys. Let me go ahead and I know that, Larry, let me introduce you first. You want to come on up here real quick?
Sure.
This is, you guys, this is, let's give a big round of applause. This is Larry Barrett. Larry's currently running for sheriff of Las Vegas, and I'll let you take it from there.
All right, I'll just spend just a couple of minutes. I appreciate the opportunity to get before you in the group tonight. I've got a strong belief that as we move forward in Southern Nevada especially, that there's a different way to do what it is that we do. I'm a service-oriented police officer for 28 years here in Southern Nevada, managed our SWAT teams for 7 years, was a member of the teams for another 6 years. I certainly know my way around a firearm, and that started when I was a young man. I grew up in the state of Maine. I still have property back there, and that's where I do the majority of my hunting. My first NRA safety course was when I was 8 years old, and my first deer hunt with my father was when I was 11. My dad's still alive, and while he heater hunts a little more than he actually gets out, now he's nearly 80. But he and I still enjoy that together, and you know, the feelings that you have about the sport that you love so much, I'm sure that they're very common with the feelings that I have about those sports. And my boys have enjoyed the sport like I did with my dad. It is a family event, as it typically is. And I want you to know that I believe when it comes to firearms, I believe in common sense gun ownership. And it's as simple as that. It doesn't need to be any more complex than that. With each piece, I simply hold it up to that lens of common sense gun ownership. So it's not oppressive. It's not, but it makes sense. There are certain people who we know. I mean, we know as a group, and there's more of us than there are of them, who really should not have their hands on a firearm for mental illness, for propensity, for severe violence. You know, those are individuals we've really got to watch, and we do that as a community more than we do it as a law enforcement group. If I get my way, and I'm sheriff of Clark County, then we will push that see something, say something, hear something, say something message to every member of the community. So with issues like handguns in the hands of the wrong individuals, we have a level of communication that gives us a sense of protection that we deserve. It's not stronger laws that stop bad people from doing bad things. It's stronger people doing functional good things that stop that kind of nonsense from occurring. We all know that. We just need to stand up and say we recognize it and then coalesce together and do something about it. And that's what I'm about. And while I leave early tonight for another event, I'd like to come back. I handed out a number of business cards. I'll leave somewhere on the corner with a number or a website that you can get in touch with me, and I'd like for you to follow me. Take a look, and as you consider your vote for the next Clark County Sheriff, I hope that you consider me and remember me when you're going through that process. So thank you very much.
Okay, let me go ahead and move up here. We've got Mike. You want to stand up? You want to come on up and talk a little bit? Mike Majorek. He's actually running for Assembly District 35, Southern Highlands area. And I'll let you go ahead and.
Well, good evening. Thanks for having me here this evening. I appreciate it. I work on another committee with Mike, and he invited me here tonight just because of my love for firearms and the shooting community. I grew up shooting, and I can tell you a little story about that. My kids also grew up shooting. It was our, what do you want to say, our thing that we did on 4th of July and New Year's. Instead of going down and finding fireworks and blowing them up outside of our house, I'd take the kids down to the desert where you pretty much can't do that anymore in town. But we used to go down to the mountains and we used to shoot off guns and take targets out there, and that was our fun for New Year's and 4th of July. And we're talking about the time that they were little. You know, my daughter was 7 years old when she finally was able and be strong enough to shoulder my SKS all by herself. And it was that year that she actually shot the top off of a lava rock, took it home, and kept it on her dresser for like 10 years, was telling all her friends about it. I got that with my dad's gun, and it was this cool thing, you know. But back then, it wasn't a strange thing for somebody to say, hey, you know what, I went out to the mountains and I shot some guns. Now all of a sudden, it seems like the mentality has changed in the world where people are afraid of the device, where what the problem is the people. The sense of self-responsibility has gone out the window. The sense of self-control has gone out the window. People, for some reason, are now flipping the switch in their brain where if they don't agree with something, they turn to violence and they decide that they want to slaughter a bunch of people. And you see it in the news all the time. So it frustrates me. I know it frustrates you. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of this legislation has come about across the country, because people just don't understand. How do you fix a problem people start blaming the utility. Just like if somebody rams a car into a building, you don't blame the car, but that's what's kind of been going on. So I appreciate what you're doing here. I definitely am in support of, like Larry Burns said, let's get down to the root of the problem. Let's get back to responsibility in the home. I really appreciate the fact that we have a youth group back here that's promoting firearm sports. That's great, because children need to understand. Curiosity is one of the things that causes a lot of problems for people. You don't know what this is, you pick it up, you're like, oh, look at that, oh, and it goes off. Well, if a child knows that if they've been out, the youth has a shooting sports program, they understand safety. They understand, number one, the first thing you do when you pick up a firearm is you clear it. Make sure it's, you always assume it's live. That's been lost in society, and that's a shame, because it's part of our heritage as a country and as a people that's what has been around for a long time, in generations, and somewhere along the line it got lost. So either way, long story short, 24-year resident here in the state of Nevada. Been married a long time, 25 years. My 2 kids are grown now. I finally have time to give back into the community, and this is my way of doing it. My grandparents and my father were all in the military. I unfortunately was unable to. I wanted to get in the Air Force to fly airplanes, but with my eyesight and my back problems, they wouldn't let me in. So this is my way of being able to give back and get involved in the community and do something that needs to get done. I'm going to take my common sense, small business mind and bring that problem-solving ability into Carson City and be able to sit down and get some real-world solutions to the problems that we're all facing across the board, not just in the firearms and the wildlife industries, but finance, education. There are a lot of things that we need to be addressing in the coming years. So I'm part of that solution. Name again is Mike Majorek. I'm running for Assembly 35, which is in the southwest area of the valley, Southern Highlands, Mountains Edge, and this cool little cutoff section in between there. It's not about whether you live in the area. If you believe in getting people into Carson City that actually are here to do the right thing, then give me a call, support me, spread the word, because that's how we're going to get people elected. Getting the word out and getting folks in Carson City that can actually do the job. So thanks again. You can read up about me at MikeForNevada.com.
Mike, thank you. If Mike does sit on another committee with me, it's for the Boy Scouts. We've got 20,000 Boy Scouts here in Las Vegas. Since United Way pulled away from them and are not funding them, the local scouts here had to find a way to supplement that. So they hold, this is our 8th year of holding a sporting clay shooting tournament. What makes this thing as unique is $5,000 a team to join. It's $25,000 for a main team that wants to be a sponsor with that. Last year we had 30 teams. So in one day on a Saturday in Las Vegas, we raised over $100,000 for scouts doing this. Mike stepped to the plate and says, tell me what I got to do. If I got to knock on doors and help people come on out and get involved in that, I will. So Mike, on behalf of the scouts, thank you for doing what you do. Okay? Crescent, you want to come on up here? Crescent is running for the U.S. Congress, House of Representatives, District 4. Right now, holding that seat is Stephen Horsford, so he's running up against Stephen, and go ahead and have the floor.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate you guys getting together and making this group work the way it's going. I hope you continue to expand. As I tell you, I really believe this is the way you're going to get your word out, and it brings the power to make sure people like myself, well, I didn't have to pay attention because I was already paying attention, but to get people to understand how valuable you guys are as an asset. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm 5th generation son of former ranchers out of Mesquite, Nevada. My grandfather was the first baby born in Mesquite, Nevada. My great-great-grandfather was the original settler of the valley. So we've been around since the 1870s. With that, I'd just like to tell you a little story about my concerns about wildlife. As a child growing up in the 60s and the 70s, we had tremendous deer herds out on the Arizona Strip and everything here on the Bunkerville Mountain and back Mormon Mountain. And the late 60s, the government began to take the cattle off the ranges. People get a little confused about the way things work. People think wilderness area is a great valuable asset. It is if it meets that criteria. But what happened when they started pulling the cattle back in the desert Southwest, water comes out of the ground, goes right back in the ground. Farmers and ranchers developed those waters and piped those waters down the canyons to where it benefits livestock and the wildlife along with it. As those cattle get pulled out, the rancher is just going to move the cattle to the closest water. They leave it alone, the rest of it, so it doesn't expand that area. Cattle don't compete with the same feed that sheep and deer do. they will compete with the same feed that elk will down in the farm areas, but that's not a big issue. It can be solved. There's a good program going on where those permits are helped somewhat to share out there with the loss that the farms still have. But the reason I bring this up, Nevada, as you know, is 86% federal lands. And there's individuals in Congress right now that continue to want to turn this whole state into a wilderness area. Now, I have big time concern about my area out there, the Gold Butte area, and what's happened. The deer herds are not even close to where they are because the cattle aren't anywhere where they were back in the 60s and 70s. My dad had a 750 head cow permit on the Arizona Strip and the Bunkerville Mountain at a place called Wiregrass. By the mid-70s, it was down to less than 300. It's down to 90 now. The weeds have grown over. We've had range fires every 5 years since the 70s. Range fires weren't even prevalent in Nevada until after they started pulling the cattle off. And if you knew the old phrase from those the people that are the environmental type, it was cattle free by 93. Well, they haven't been totally successful, but they continue to work at that. That's what happens with the sage grouse issue, all the other issues out there. As a congressman, I will fight to make sure that Nevada gets its lands back. It'll be better handled by the people of Nevada. That's the way it was supposed to be. In 1828, the West was places like Louisiana, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas. They got all their lands back when they went to statehood in 1828. In 1864, we were promised to be on the same basis with all other states, equal ground. That meant, and over 28 times they talked about us getting our lands back. We still have yet to get our lands back. That's tax dollars for schools and other, but it's also us to be able to manage our lands the way we want to. We can better afford to have more fish and game folks manage the land rather than having other people out there trying to compete with it. I believe there's also concerns about what's happening in the state of Nevada with our wildlife areas, with our own Nevada Department of Wildlife. I'll be honest with you, I have some concerns. And so I will fight those issues and continue to help do what I believe is right. I'm a big avid hunter. I'm not really good at drawing tags. It took me 36 years to draw a sheep tag. So I don't know what I've got to do. I guess run for Congress, maybe I can get one.
It doesn't help.
But I got to tell you, in 1967, my father shot the biggest deer in the state of Nevada that year. It was a 44-inch typical buck, and he threw the horns under the load chute. That's where they stayed for years until all of a sudden I thought, I got to get those horns. And guess what? They were gone when I went to go get them. But I am an active sportsman. Continue to love to chase sheep around and deer. So I'm now on your side. I hope I get your support down the road. Thank you.
Kristen, thank you. Okay, standing back here, we've got Scott Hammond. Before I let Scott Hammond talk, let me tell you a little bit what Scott Hammond has done for Sportsmen of Nevada. Some of you probably already know this. When we formed as a coalition, our main objective at that time, our number one priority up on the radar screen, was to amend the Nevada Constitution. We wanted to add in that it's a right to hunt, fish, and trap in the state of Nevada. Scott presented that bill for us. So Scott, on behalf of the sportsmen, I want to thank you for putting your Scott from Alaska, he came here and said, yeah, I mean, everybody should. But then a lot of people started asking, well, why? It's already a privilege. You can go buy a deer tag right now. Yes. Can you do that in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Who knows? I look out here, we've got a lot of the older, I would call it the older generation. You've probably acquired some equity, a little bit of wealth. How do you protect it? Do you go find a trust? Do you go find, whatever you do? But now you're thinking of, I did all of this work, I want to protect it. Well, you've got Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn. Put 780,000 gallons of water on the mountains around Nevada. Just like Crescent said, if they turned it into wilderness, who's going to take care of that? It'll go by. It has the potential to go by. So what we wanted to be able to do is put it out to the voters. We wanted to get it on the ballot So let the voters have a say in how the state's managed. It went in front of a committee. We had the votes for it. Didn't get heard after that. Well, we're hoping that we can talk Scott into bringing that up again. That will always been on our forefront. It doesn't mean in the immediate future right now that we can't hunt, fish, and craft in the state. We are trying to do it for our next generation to protect, like Tristan has talked about, what's going to happen in 20 years. As we pass on, we want to know that we've left something to the younger generation, and how did we do it? If nothing else, we've got a part on Nevada's Constitution that we can point to and say, see that right there, you kids? Kids in the back row, this is what we're trying to leave for you guys. Okay? Scott is a current senator, District 17. Scott, thank you for what you've done. I'm going to let you have the floor.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very kind words. I'm not going to say much because I didn't think I was going to ask to talk today. But I am the current senator from District 18, actually, and I'm not up for re-election, so but I came here to thank you. You're the lucky one, Scott.
Yeah.
That's why he's not prepared to talk.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared to talk. I see someone's recording everything, and I've heard Crescent's story a million times, so if you could copy to me, I appreciate it, because I want to make sure I remember this forever. I've heard it a lot. It was my privilege. It really was. To look at me, you'd think that guy grew up in Alaska. I don't look like the prototypical Alaskan. I didn't own a truck in high school. I didn't have a gun rack in the back and a snowplow in the front. I played basketball most of the time, but I was an avid fisherman. I went out and hunted occasionally. I loved the wilderness. When this idea was brought to me, basically they said that this is something that's going around in several other states. I believe, what did we say, 17 states, I'm sorry, 17 states. I think Texas is actually looking at it right now. And all it was the ability to say that you have a constitutional right to hunt, fish, and trap. And it wasn't just myself that supported it. It was several people. It was very bipartisan. Senator Debbie Smith is a big supporter of what goes on. Senator Bosnian, who's on the other side of the aisle from me, he's a big supporter. Matter of fact, at one point, myself and Bosnian and Senator Mark Hutchison, we went out together and go hunting. It's something that has a lot of bipartisan support because a lot of people, this is cultural here in the state of Nevada, and we just wanted to put that. We wanted to amend the Constitution so that in perpetuity we could always have somebody who is sports-minded at the seat of the table. It doesn't mean that we can't change things. It doesn't mean that other people can't come in and say, we need to compromise here or there. The urban area is growing larger. It didn't mean any of that. It just meant that there was going to be somebody who had the huntsman, a sportsman in mind when legislation was being passed or regulations were being drawn up. That's all it meant. And it really did have a lot of support. We had a really good committee meeting. A lot of fruitful discussion was had, and a lot of people who loved it brought their opinions to the table. Those who opposed it brought their opinions to the table. In the end, we had a hard time getting through the chair of that committee. Didn't think that the need rose to a constitutional amendment. The need to have that, rose to that sort of level. But hopefully we can persuade them as we go forward. I'd be honored to bring it, again. I believe in it. I grew up with the idea of going out there and being a part of the land. You can't grow up in Alaska without feeling that. You can't grow up in the state of Nevada. There's a lot of parallels between the two states. So I appreciated the support of all those who showed up. It was a really good meeting, was it not?
It was. It was very good.
I've never had such a huge, contingent of people who were supporting something that I was bringing forward. It was good to have all those people on my side. Typically, I have everybody against me. So it was really good to see them there in support of that bill. And I want to thank you again for all that you do. It really helps that you guys go out there, give up some of your time, things that you could be doing at home, to come here tonight and every other night you guys do something. Every time you guys go out and you participate in, I get lots of emails from WIN saying, hey, we're going to do this project, do that project. If most of the people in the state of Nevada knew that what your aim is to continually give back to the land, I think that there would be more support, even more so than they are right now. But that's what I hope people will come to the conclusion. I've come to the conclusion that what you do is that you bring in funds, you bring in resources, and you give it back to the land. You guys are the ones who are making sure that that land is there for generations to come. And I see that in all the projects that you do, all the things that you
sponsor, all the way that you try to craft or help legislation that brings wildlife back into some certain habitats. I believe that the Big Four Chief have a debt of gratitude to you guys. I'm getting the hook from press right now. The white flag. I have the white flag, but these are all things that I really truly believe that's what you guys have been involved in, and hopefully we can get that word out even more so with all the new community down there. So thank you again for your participation. Thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, I've got 3 other points I want to raise before I introduce our last one. For some of you in the audience, our coalition is a nonpartisan. I know that some of the people that you see in here are Republican, but I've got one person I got to introduce who's actually my partner. Okay, he's a former pro-tem mayor of Las Vegas, a Democrat, my Uncle Gary Reese. On camera, we have a Republican and a Democrat as a partner, and we have some very lively discussions. However, this is the gentleman who taught me how to shoot and how to hunt. So on behalf of that, thank you. Okay.
Okay. I've always wondered, when you go back to Washington, D.C., it's the Democratic side, the Republican side. When I go to City Hall, it's nonpartisan. I can do whatever I want, the people wanted me to do. You call Carson City, sometimes you get called back as a mayor pro tem. I didn't get very many. And you call back to, Washington, D.C., you don't get any calls. And I never thought of myself as a Democrat. I never voted a straight party ticket in my life. Okay? I feel like that I want to vote for the person that thinks it's going to represent me and my needs. So I appreciate these guys being here tonight, putting themselves out here, wanting to run for office to help us. Thank you.
Thank you. One of our guest speakers tonight is Senator Mark Hutchison, running for Lieutenant Governor. He's got a list of some of the items that he wants to address, so I'm going to have you tie this in. I brought a couple things that you don't know about. This is Time Magazine, okay? And on the very front cover, this is December of 2013, okay? It reads, America's Pest Problem. Why the rules of hunting are about to change. Okay? And part of this, Mark, I'd like you to discuss a little bit, and I know that you're going to discuss sage grouse and stuff as well. I don't know what Mark's going to say, and I said I got one point I want to raise about this is lately the sportsmen have been tasked with trying to keep the sage grouse off the list, endangered or threatened list. Let me remind everybody in this group, I know we're sportsmen, the way that they're trying to do that is the restoration of the sagebrush. Okay? Let me remind you guys, that is our state flower. There's got to be some other funds around, just not on the backs of sportsmen, to protect our state flower. And nobody has brought that point up. So as you go around and you meet people and stuff, I would like you to look into that and see about it, because it's not just on the backs of sportsmen. So let me introduce to you guys running for Lieutenant Governor, Mark Hutchison.
So Mike did tell me I was going to have like this pop quiz about like tying my remarks with covers of Time magazine. I always knew that I was in for a very long night. Scott Hammond and I shared adjoining offices in the Senate this session. I knew I was always in for a long night. Within the session, Scott would come in and say, "Mark, I just got something to tell you real quick." I settled in, keep my feet up for a while and reach for the white flag. But it's great to be here with Senator Hammond. It's great to be here, President Steve. Mike, thanks for running. Larry Burns, who's left, is a good friend of mine. My brother served with him on the SWAT team for years and years and years. Larry's is a true Nevadan, a true American. I hope you'll support him. He would be a wonderful sheriff for us. I go way back with Mike. Mike, his brother's name is Craig. Craig and I went to Bonanza High School together. Craig and I played in the same backfield He was a fullback, I was a halfback. Believe it or not, that was back when, well, I'll tell you, fullbacks and halfbacks could be really slow and fat and squatty and not have any kind of skills at all. But we had a lot of fun and known the Reese family for a long time. So I appreciate your invitation here tonight, the opportunity to be here with you, and thank you for being here as well. You know, I know what it's like to be time-starved. You know, I know what it's like to have a million things going on in your life, and then to try to fit one more thing into your life. A lot of different demands going on in your life, and I just want to first make a comment about coalitions like this. This is one of the very first coalitions I came to and spoke with when I ran for the Senate, and had the support in the backing of the coalition, which I'm grateful for. But you know, you can do a lot of different things with your time. And let me just tell you what Dwight David Eisenhower said about that. He said, if you appreciate the heritage that you have as an American, if you appreciate and treasure the freedoms and the opportunities you have because of this country and the United States Constitution, he said, you ought to make politics your part-time profession. You ought to make politics your part-time profession. And the reason is because you may not be interested in politics, but politics is very, very interested in you. You may not be interested, you know, in running for office or supporting candidates. It does not matter. It doesn't matter whether you're engaged or not. It's going to find you. It's going to determine how much money you take home at the end of the day. It's going to determine what your curriculum is in schools. It's going to determine, you know, where you can fish and hunt and trap. And it's going to determine all kinds of things. And so we can ignore politics all we want. But the thing I love about what the coalition does is you're engaged in politics. It's going to come find you. So my hat's off to you. Kudos to you for a lot of things that you can be doing tonight, for making part-time your profession, this crazy thing we call politics. But it's very important, it's vital. Let me just kind of tell you a little bit about myself, and then I want to really talk about a macro issue, a big kind of a 30,000-foot view issue that I think is important, that impacts everybody in this room, and impacts in particular what the coalition is about. I'm third generation Nevada, and just had twin grandchildren, and now we've got 4 grandchildren. I've got 6 children, so 6 children, 4th generation, 4 grandchildren. We're 5th generation Nevadans. I didn't start as long ago as Crescent's family did. I wasn't the first baby. Was it you? Your grandpa's first baby? I haven't heard the story as many times as Scott has, but it is an impressive story. We don't go quite that far back, but Crescent's another one of those great Nevadans who you got to get behind as well and support. He's a great leader in the assembly this year. But my grandfather came to Nevada by way of Kentucky. He was a Kentucky farm boy, and he came out to southern Utah through the Great Depression. This was a program called the CCCs, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and they'd take these Kentucky farm boys off, and they would bring them west and throughout the United States, and they would build roads and bridges. Well, he wound up in Zion National Park, and pretty soon it wasn't long before he discovered St. George, Utah, down here, southern Utah, and found my grandma when she was 19 years old, and as we say, found my grandma, corrupted her, moved her to Las Vegas. He went to work for the test site, and we've been here ever since. My dad was the very first employee of a company that you may be familiar with called, it's a company here in town called Ahern Rentals. If you drive down 95, you see Ahern Rentals with the big boom lifts and everything. The company's doing great now. Went through some struggles, but they persevered. My dad was the first employee. I'm telling you the story so you understand the Nevada that I grew up in, sort of my view of Nevada. And it's not unlike Councilman Reese, and thank you for your years and years of service and thinking of us as Nevadans first instead of some political party. But this is the Nevada I grew up in. So my dad was the first employee at Ahern Rentals with John Ahern. And this company now is today the largest equipment rental company in the country. You see locations all over Nevada, and they're all over the United States. This was just a little company down on Main Street when my dad started. And then he moved to Bonanza. They took over all Bonanza now. But he worked there and ultimately worked his way up, became general manager and vice president of Ahern Rentals. And he worked there his whole life. I started there when I was 12 and worked there my entire life until I went to law school. So I know what it's like to put a pair of boots on and grab a lunch pail and go to work. And so did my dad. Well, eventually, my dad's turning about 59 or 60, and he begins to crash vehicles into other vehicles and other things that are not moving. And soon we find out that he's got Alzheimer's disease. And so by this time, Don Ahern now has bought his dad out and over the company, and loves my dad, and says, "Look, here, let's get you out of the vehicles, let's get out of the cars." And what I want you to do is just check in equipment as it comes in, and comes in the yard, leaves the yard. Just check in equipment. Now, this is a man, who was vice president, general manager, who ran the place for most of his life. He's checking in equipment as it comes in, checking equipment as he leaves. He can't drive. My mom takes him in the morning to work, picks him up at night, and that goes on for months. Pretty soon, my dad's, just reasoning and thinking doesn't allow him to even accurately do that. So then Don says, let's bring him in, just help us file. Just do office work, administrative work, and just file. So for a while, my dad was able to do that. My mom would take him in the morning, pick him up at night, did that for months at a time. Pretty soon, he couldn't do that. And, Don Aher was just trying to give him some dignity, left and be able to put him to useful work and make him feel valuable. So he said, Gary, all I want you to do now is just sign checks all day long. Aher Metals processed about 200 checks, at least back then it did, a day. And he was on the account. So all he did have to do was just sign his name, Gary Hutchison. And pretty soon his motor skills got to the point where you couldn't even legibly read his signature anymore, so he couldn't do that. So Don Aher then went into the shop, told the shop guy, said, look, I want you to take Gary's signature, I want you to make a metal stencil out of it for Gary. So he did that, he brought it back in, and he said, Gary, all you have to do now is just trace the lines and stay the lines with your signature. And so my dad would do that day in and day out, month after month after month. Mom would take him in the morning, pick him up at night, and all he did was just trace his names, Gary Hutchison. Eventually he couldn't even do that. My mom came and got him for the last time, and for the last 3 years he went home. He was bedridden, and he couldn't do anything. But every week for the remainder of his life, my dad received a check from Aher. And then 3 weeks after he died, Don Aher called my mom and my brother and said, years ago, when the company was young, my dad, John Aher, took out life insurance policy on your father and husband. Key man life insurance policy, and we just got the check in this week, and he showed it to my mom. It was for a lot of money. It wasn't for crazy money. It was for a lot of money. And he turned the check over, endorsed it, and said, "BJ, that's for you." And she lived on that money for the rest of her life. For 7 years after my dad died, we buried her in November. Now, that's the Nevada I grew up in. Those are the people I grew up around. Those are the values that were still in me. I've got very, very little patience for people who want to denigrate people like me. Because they work hard and they're entrepreneurs and they're successful and they give us an opportunity to feed our families and to bless our lives. And there's been a radical change in the way that we view entrepreneurs and business owners and those who take risks and bless our lives. I just don't have much patience for that. I went to law school, came back to Nevada, started my own law practice. I have a law firm now that's got about 45 lawyers, and I know that in a room like this that may not be a good thing, but there are 45 good lawyers in Las Vegas, and we do a lot of good work, I think, for people, particularly for businesses. We own a lot. We represent a lot of businesses. We do commercial transactions, litigation, that sort of stuff. Had some of you in this room, even as clients, and just really appreciate businessmen and businesswomen and those who make our lives good in many ways. But anyway, in 2010, I was happy. I had a good law firm. I got 6 kids. They're all running around. I'm coaching them in football. And I've been a scoutmaster 3 times for scout troops, and enjoying my family, enjoying this law firm. In 2010, Barack Obama signed a piece of legislation you may have heard of called the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. And immediately, within minutes of him signing that law, 14 states sued the federal government, saying we think this law is unconstitutional. And our governor at the time wanted to join that lawsuit. Our attorney general didn't want to do that. He refused to do that. He appointed me to represent Nevada. I did so pro bono because I felt so strongly about what was at issue here. In representing Nevada in that constitutional challenge to Obamacare. It was known as Obamacare now. And we took that lawsuit on behalf of Nevada, and pretty soon it wasn't just 14 states, it was 27 states that joined together, challenged that law in federal court, won it to district court, we won it to the Court of Appeals, took it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and Justice Roberts at the end kind of switched on us and did something we didn't expect that he would do. And in fact, we in our wildest dreams didn't imagine he would do, which was say that fine that you have to pay if you don't have insurance turns out not to be a fine, turns out to be a tax. Regardless of what every congressman and every senator and President Barack Obama himself said, that it wasn't a tax. Turns out the only reason it's here today and it's constitutional is it's a tax as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. Now, and I know people are on different sides of the aisle on that question. There's a big debate in our country. I'm not here to debate it. I'm just here to say I was there challenging the constitutionality of that law. And I saw up front and in person though, this huge behemoth of an organization we call the federal government, up front and in person. And I found out what it was like to see people who wanted to change our system of government. Not change just policies or procedures or maybe change some different laws, but our very system of government. And I walked away from that experience thinking, you know what, our federal government is, I'm very concerned about it. I'm very concerned about the checks and balances. You're all old enough to have been taught in civics, checks and balances, right? Our founding fathers said, we do not want a king. We don't want a concentration of power. Before 1776, the history of the world was tyranny, dictatorship, and monarchy. That's what it was. And so our founding fathers embarked on this new experiment. They called it an experiment. And they said, we don't want this concentration of power. We want diffusion of power. We want a legislative and executive and judicial branch so the power is diffused. But I walked away from that experience thinking, I'm not sure that the system of government that was created, particularly at the federal level, is working like it was envisioned by the founding fathers. But fortunately, the founding fathers also said, liberty and freedom is so important to us that we're not only going to divide power horizontally at the federal level, we're going to divide it vertically between the federal government and the state's government, and the state governments. There's not one sovereign. There's the United States, which is the sovereign, and there's 50 states that are sovereign in this country. And so I came back to that experience thinking, I absolutely believe, this is what drives me to the office, what drives me, to become involved now at this time in my life. I believe the last line of defense for freedom and liberties in our system of government is the states. And so I became involved in the state government. Ran for the state senate, was fortunate enough to win. With good people like my fellow legislators here tonight. And I really believe that the next decade, the real constitutional question for us, and the real question politically for us, is going to be whether states are going to have sovereignty, or whether we're essentially going to be wards of the federal government. I think that's a fight worth fighting. And I think it impacts what we're talking about here tonight, what's important for you tonight. That's what we're talking about this macro view. So one of the things that you do as lieutenant governor is you're in charge of economic development. You're not necessarily in charge of your important part of your board of economic development. You're also like vice chairman of the board of transportation. You are the commission on tour, the chairman of the commission on tours. You're the president of the Senate. You have all these responsibilities, which are very important. But to me, maintaining our constitutional system of government, and the first thing you're going to do when any of us take office publicly is we put our hand on the Bible and put our arm to the swear. We swear that we're going to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America and the state of Nevada. I think some people think that's a perfunctory statement or a perfunctory obligation. I take that very seriously. I think we got an obligation to do that. And so what I want to do as a lieutenant governor, as at the highest levels of our executive branch, is I want to remind the federal government we're a sovereign. And there are good things the federal government does, but there's a lot of things they shouldn't do. But the states do far, far better. We talked about the sage-grouse. We talked about federal lands. That's just going to be the constitutional debate of the next decade. I firmly believe that. And there ought to be those who know how to push back and know how to assert sovereignty at the highest levels within our executive branch. So people say, well, everybody says, the government's out of control. The federal government's out of control. And we complain about our federal lands and the sage-grouse. What's your plan, Hutchison? So you can up here to start. What's your plan? Let me tell you my plan. My plan is we follow the model that we follow with challenging the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. You get together a coalition of like-minded states, because the federal government could care less if a rancher sued, or even one state. You want to get their attention? Is when a coalition of multiple states get together and say, we're sovereigns, we're pushing back against you politically, constitutionally, and if necessary, legally, to make sure that we protect our citizens and we have our sovereignty asserted. So I would put together, and so it's already happening. I'm a member of the American Lands Council. And Crescent already touched on this. I think Crescent, you're dialed into that. You know all about this as well. If you haven't heard about the American Lands Council, you got to go home and Google it. The American Lands Council exists for this purpose. It asks this question: why is it that if you draw a red line down the Rocky Mountains and you look at all the states east of the Rocky Mountains, the average ownership of land by the federal government within those states is between 3 and 5%. And if you look west of the Rocky Mountains, the average ownership of lands by the federal government is 50, 60, in Nevada, 86, 87%. Why is that? How can you justify that? And again, Creston touched on this. How can you justify that? How can you justify that politically, constitutionally, under the Equal Protection Clause and other clauses, and legally? Now, let me just give you this little tidbit. The legislation that in Congress created Nevada and Nebraska, the legislation is called enabling legislation. Those pieces of legislation were created and passed by Congress 1 month apart. Nebraska and Nevada. Nebraska, we actually became states 3 years apart eventually, but we were formed in Congress by the enabling legislation 1 month apart. Almost identical enabling legislation. Nebraska started off with 30% federal land ownership. You know what Nebraska's federal land ownership is now? 1%. Nevada started off with 90% federal land ownership. You know what Nevada's federal land ownership is now? 86, 87%. How in the world? I asked my friends in the legal community, my political friends, my constitutional friends, how do you justify that politically, legally, or constitutionally? The answer is no. So why does it matter? It matters because if we can get more of our federal lands back, a lot of these challenges that we're facing are mitigated significantly. The sage grouse, for example, right? Mike, so the sage grouse issue, the whole point there is that the state controls the bird and the federal government controls the land. And if we had the land transferred to the states, as what happened, we're not asking for something radical. This happened to everything east of the Rocky Mountains. If our land's transferred back to us, to the states have much more, in my view, reasonable control of the lands than the federal government does. Do a much better job managing the lands. Mining, for example. If you go out to Yarrington, there's a mine out there called Pumpkin Hollow. I've been out there to it, talked to all the owners. It's 1/3 on private land, 2/3 on federal land. On the 1/3 land, private, it's gangbusters. They're producing copper. They've got about 350 jobs out there. On the federal land, they've been trying for years to get federal permitting. By the way, in the state, it takes about 18 months to get a mine permit on state property. In the federal government, it can take years, beyond 10 years, beyond a decade. If they could, though, get permitting, or better yet, if the state controlled that, they said overnight they could create 1,000 jobs. 1,000 good-paying mining jobs, between $60,000 and $80,000 a year. Now, why does that matter? Lyon County has the highest unemployment in the state of Nevada, which has got the second highest unemployment in the entire country. Lyon County has one of the highest unemployments, I think it's in the top 3 or 5, of all the counties in the United States. 1,000 jobs in Lyon County tomorrow if we had more control of our federal lands. And I'm not talking about every piece of federal land. I get it. Nevada's got a lot of controlled space because of our military history, because of the federal government involvement. I get all that stuff. Federal monuments and land, I get that. But I'm talking about around our populated areas. Just around Las Vegas. Why doesn't we own so much land around Las Vegas? Or around Yarrington? Or around Elko, for Pete's sakes? Let's get more of that land transferred back. What does that do? It makes it so a lot of these issues that we're talking about, which is the Endangered Species Act and the sage grouse, which is going to shut us down as a state. If you don't believe that, just look and see what the effects were of the spotted owl in the Northwest. It's going to shut down, it's going to a significant effect, mining, agriculture, ranching, recreational opportunities, hunting, power transmission, significant effect there. And if you want to know what the greatest economic engine would be in this state, let's get our federal lands. Let's get those federal lands. Those lands are under federal control, transferred to the state. Let's be able to permit mines and get those down to the counties, and the counties in the hands of individuals, so we can get a better tax base. So that's one of the things that I really am passionate about, and I'm running on as Lieutenant Governor, is pushing back, asserting our sovereignty, getting more of our lands in the control of the state. And it affects everything that you all stand for. If the state controlled more of those lands, we'd be in a far better position now. So I hope that you'll think about that, and if you haven't evaluated the American Lands Council, look at that, maybe become a member of it, because that's going to be one of the solutions for Nevada going forward. Let me just close and leave you just with this. If you have not taken a look yet at this margin stacks, you got to take a look at it. Crescent, Scott, me, I'm sure Mike, do the same thing. This thing is an absolute disaster. As far as businesses are concerned, as far as job growth is concerned, as far as making Nevada prosperous and blessed. This will be on the ballot in 2014. If you haven't heard of it, please, think about this. This will ask the question. It'll be up for a vote. Should the state of Nevada impose a 2% tax on all businesses that have gross income of $1 million or more? Gross income of $1 million or more. Doesn't matter if you make money as a business, if you lose money as a business, you break even as a business, doesn't matter. We had a little dairy farmer from Fallon come up to the legislature and testify about this. We've had a dairy farm in our family for 5 generations. And let me just tell you what's happened in the last 5 years. Last 5 years, we broke even or lost money in the last five years. Last year, for example, we said we had $5 million revenue, $5 million expenses because feed costs are nothing. $5 million revenue, $5 million expenses, broke even. Under this tax was being proposed, we owe the state of Nevada $50,000. He said, I'll shut it down, I'll lay off my 2 employees, and I'll be done. I can't afford that. And that's exactly what people have told me, and business owners, and those who provide opportunities for us to grow and develop and have jobs all over the state. They're going to go to Idaho, they know right where they're going. They're going to Idaho, they're going to Wyoming. We need an analysis on this, and this report has been out. Nevada will have the 4th or 5th, depending on which study you look at, 4th or 5th highest corporate income tax rate in the country. Nevada will never again be able to say they're business friendly or tax friendly. If you go to California and you're a business, you're going to be better off in California about 90% of the time it is marginal tax passes. And it's going to be all done in the name of education. They're going to say this is the education tax initiative. But the little secret is it doesn't have to go to increasing education funding. It's not required to increase the amount of education funding. There's a right way to do this, the wrong way to do this. This is going to be a disaster. I hope that's on your radar screen. Why is that within the wheelhouse of the Lieutenant Governor? Because that's economic development. And Brian Sandler gave a speech 2 days ago and said this will be the fatal blow in many businesses in Nevada that are just now recovering. He announced during his 3 years of his administration over 60,000 jobs created. But this is a major threat to us. So again, I'm speaking to part-time politicians here, right? So you take that home and you spread that message and let people know about what we have, what the opportunities we have in terms of our federal lands, what the threat is in terms of our margins tax. We've got other great opportunities I'd love to talk to you more about, but I've taken way more of your time. This is about what Scott Hammond would have done to me had he come into my office and said, and just have a few days of your time. So I'll sit down, but thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you again for being interested in not only wildlife issues, but politics in general, to make Nevada a better place to live. God bless you and all that you do. Thank you very much. Chris got a great point, which was this tax is structured in such a way that if you are a business and you have $999,999, you don't owe anything under this tax. But if you get $2 more, so you're over $1 million, $1,001, the full amount of that tax now is applied to you as a business. So what do you think those businesses are going to do as they start getting close to that 900,000? They're going to shut down. They're going to lay people off. They're going to say, September, we're done, for the year. This is just a disastrous tax in so many ways. And we can't even fix it as a legislature for 3 years of a passage. No matter how bad it is, we can't fix it for 3 years. So thank you, Creston. You're absolutely right. Creston's been sounding the alarm as well. We all are, because it's a disaster. Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
If you
it.
would stand up here for a little bit, we're going to field some questions.
Field some
from the audience.
questions. Okay.
But before I do that, I want to lead into part of the reason that we have lawmakers here. And maybe some of you guys don't understand this. Our Department of Wildlife is regulated by the legislature, which means you could have a freshman legislator come in that doesn't really understand all the workings of wildlife and this and that. They get caught up to speed, but they are voting on a bill that will affect sportsmen that maybe have been around for 20, 30 years. So this is the reason this coalition got formed, for politics.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a retired carpenter, and you could have a union meeting out on a deer hunt, and there's been a lot of times at our camp that, I look around, most of them are they're blue-collar guys. So part of the reason of having them here is when bills get generated in the legislature that affect the wildlife. We had SB 134, which was the guzzard. Yeah. We've had SB 213. We've had SB 226. We've had a lot of these. How can the sportsmen that are here in the audience be effective of knowing that their voice is being heard?
So here's the first thing I would say. You got different legislators here. Scott can answer this. Creston answer. By the way, Creston was a leader in the assembly and did a wonderful job as minority leader, and a lot of kudos to what Creston did this last session. You've already delivered all over Scott. You're all in love with him already. So, but let me just say this. Number one thing. The number one thing you could do is help us elect one more senator so that we get a majority in the Senate. Currently we have an 11-10 split between Republicans and Democrats. Now, and then in the Assembly, what was it, President? 27 to 15. 27 to 15. So it was really bad in the Assembly. It was really tough in the Assembly. But the township Republicans, most serious political people will say government works better when it's kind of divided like that. You know, it just works better when everybody can't get whatever they want. It's better, you know, when somebody who controls the Senate, somebody controls the Assembly, it just has better laws that come out of it because people got to come together. They got to find common ground, common interests. When a party just controls both houses, it's tough. It's very, very tough. So I would say the number one thing is, you know, let's elect a Republican Senate, and it's going to happen right here in Las Vegas. It's, you know, there are a couple of districts up, District 9, District 8, and depending on which way those go, will determine who controls the Senate. And why does it matter? Because the president can tell you this, the leader. When you're in the minority, you don't get to decide what time you go to lunch. Okay, let alone what bills come up, or whether you get an amendment put on it, whether it comes up for a hearing. It's just like Scott's, you know, bill with the amendment to the Constitution. It didn't come up for a hearing because Scott wasn't the chairman of that committee. Had Scott been the chairman of that committee, it's a different deal. Or if I would have been, or Greg Brower would have been, or one of the senators, would have been different. It would have been a different story. So first thing, help elect a Republican senator. Next thing though is do what you know what Mike and others have done. You know, contact and communicate with them. I can't tell you how effective it is. And again, we got other legislators here. When people actually come up to Carson City, when somebody buys a ticket, gets on a plane, flies in from Vegas, and comes over and says, "I've come all the way from Las Vegas. Can you listen to what I'm saying?" I'm going to say yes every time. I think most legislators will do that as well. And then the other thing though is work very closely and fund coalitions. You know, I'll tell you, people who are opposed to your point of view, and probably my point of view, have coalitions. And they're up there with us all the time. We hear from them all the time. And they're in front of, you know, they're in front of the committees. And they're up there lobbying. And coalitions are very effective. But it seems like, you know, some are more effective than others. Or some exist more than others. So I'd say get a Republican Senate, work very closely and strengthen this coalition of outdoorsmen and sportsmen and sportswomen. And then get up there and visit with your legislative leaders.
Okay. Let me, so that these people can hear it. I know that some of you probably have voiced your concerns on certain bills, whether it's a Republican bill, Democratic, it doesn't really matter. But you'll go onto the website and you'll cast your comments. You're limited to 1,500 words. Scott, Mark, Crescent, how intently do politicians look at that website and read those comments?
Well, I'll say this, that my secretary generated that the comment sheet once a week. She actually generated that. She showed me it. I looked at it. I looked at the comments. That was once a week. And I think it's the reason why I did that is because it's becoming more prevalent in almost every state legislature. You see that more and more in every state legislature, and especially ours. Ours is still tapped into the public. We're tapped into the individual here in the state of Nevada. We love it when you come up and visit us. We love it when you send comments in. We're still grassroots enough that we all watch that.
Yes. My secretary did the same thing, but in that last 3 to 4 weeks, time's limited.
Yeah.
And so if I was to make a suggestion, I don't know what you're doing now, but you know, some people are against lobbyists. I used to be one of those people. But you go up there, people that know their stuff, they're not there trying to sell you a bill of goods, they're trying to push their position. It's up to you to listen to what their position is and use it. And I've used lobbyists to educate on issues.
Right.
And so if you're not doing it, I think, you know, if we're going to be active, let's donate to maybe a fund that gets people there for a certain amount of time, especially in that last month. I think it would be helpful to make sure, because I have questions and it's hard to respond back electronically back to you, and so it's better to have somebody that can reach out to all of you.
You know, and that is absolutely my experience as well. But think about the really strong lobbyists, really strong organization. I mean, the NRA, right? The NRA, there's no stronger lobbying organization in the entire planet than the NRA. Why? Because they've got a bunch of engaged members who pay dues, who contribute to causes, who will contribute to ILA, you know, and the legislative action groups, and who are right there with the legislators, and they know two things. One, they're going to be very smart, they're going to be educated, and number three is they're going to hold the legislators accountable, right? I mean, that's the model, and so that's why I think this coalition could have such a great impact with, you know, get it well funded. This organization deserves money and funding, and to be the voice of outdoorsmen and sportsmen up in Carson City, and I'd be the premier organization in that.
I think you
Go ahead.
bipartisan group like this.
Yeah.
I mean, people are going to pay attention. I mean, if they don't, it's their own demise.
That's a great point, like, Councilman Reese here, and since, Democratic Republic, you come up with an outdoorsman, a sportsman, bipartisan, that's a great point, Chris.
So you guys led in my little speech here. You guys know, you may not have known this. We are one of the first coalitions that had a paid lobbyist in the last legislature. We had a couple people, we don't sell memberships into this coalition. You buy your membership by going to WIN, by going to Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, by going to the Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn. We become the political voice for you. So we had some people put some money in so that we could buy airplane tickets. So Kess, our vice president of the Southern Nevada Coalition, Kess and I went up and met with a lot of them. So you guys might sit back and say, yeah, I hear about the coalition. I don't know how effective they are. Well, you can probably know this. We probably could have got shot down worse than what we did. But because we did have the educated lobbyist that came on up, who's been an outdoorsman for 30 plus years here in the state. So in the future, we're probably going to end up start doing some fundraisers to establish some funds to get more of the people on up there. We did work hand in hand with the NRA. We are not an NRA organization, but the NRA started to see how effective we were becoming. So Dan Kareem took every call that I made to him. And we kept him apprised of what we're doing, and we partnered. Just like Mark is talking about getting all the states as coalition, guess what we did? We got all the sportsmen's groups as a coalition. Because we're only talking to one person now, or one group up at the legislature, whether it's the Assembly or the Senate. So that's how we got a lot of bills passed. We're going to spend this next year educating people on how to voice your opinion on that legislative website. Because it was effective. SB 213, the gun bill. Man, 87% of the people were against that bill. Yeah. And yet the governor had to veto it. Yeah. So what we need to do is keep more people. You might say, the reason I had them speak is you might say, what good is my voice? I'm one. You heard Scott, you heard Crescent, and you heard Mark talk about it. They do review those and they do print them out and they read all of those. So is there anybody in here that's got any questions for Mark, Crescent, Mike, Scott?
Mark, you talked about having all this government held land going from one government to another, putting up directly for private sale. You're talking about the smaller is better. I don't think anybody's going to manage the land over the private owner.
Right, and you're right. That's where you start, right? The private owners do the best that they do the best at anything. Here's how it's worked in the states east of the Rocky Mountains, right? That's how it works east of the Rocky Mountains. It gets transferred to the states. The states then, for the most part, transfer to counties, except for state lands that they want it for whatever reason control. I think it's a state issue. It gets control of the counties. The counties then are tasked with, unless there's a reason to hang on for it, disposing those and getting out to the private owners, which are going to take much better care of the land. And from a government standpoint, it's taxable value. Right. Those counties, the counties in Nevada, I don't know if you know this, you probably do, 17 counties, we go begging as counties to the federal government every single year, year after year after year, for this thing called these PILs, these payments in lieu of taxes. Right. And they give us that because the federal government knows that they own all the lands that most of the counties have in their possession and control east of the Rocky Mountains. So they throw out the crumbs and say they'll be happy with it. You got to go beg every year for them, as opposed to that land should just be in the hands of the states, the counties, and individuals.
Or like Preston say, they have to hope the government will continue in their beneficence to lease land in the road path.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, go ahead, Crescent.
Along with what he's saying there, this PILT money in this last session, in this last budget deal, probably didn't know about it. It was left out. But Senator Heller and Mark Amidei were the ones that were nervous about getting it back in there on the budget deal because guess what was the first thing to cut? The Western lands. Yeah. And other people don't understand this. BLM was put in place to distribute the lands, never to manage, to distribute. And it's turned into a whole different type of government now. So we can do it better. We as a state should have that opportunity. We don't have to sell all the lands. We can make it still our own wilderness areas. But I want to be careful about one comment you made there. This is my opinion, because I'll provide you based on one of my good friends, Ira Hans, up there. He likes history. He likes going back. But you go and look at what happened when the pioneers come to this state, or when the first trappers come across the state of Nevada, Utah, and even the western part of California. they just about starved to death. It talks about the Scandi Indians living on, were wrapped in loincloths made from jackrabbit hides. They talked about having to live on scorpions. Sage grouse wasn't prevalent before the pioneers came. Once they came, they actually cut back the cedar trees and the sagebrush. Sagebrush is kind of a misnomer with the sagebrush. It's not necessarily something for sage grouse. It's where they live. But the sage grouse, as you know, live pretty well in a kind of open, covered place. But if it gets too thick, they don't function well. And then the predators become an opportunity to take care of them. But I'd like to know from somebody other than my own opinion here. I hunted the sage grouse in the 60s with my father, and it was the last time I went hunting about 5 years ago. There was no more sage grouse in the 60s than there is right now. So we're talking about these creatures being endangered. I don't think there are. It's a way to continue to define us in areas that I truly believe this is something that when we're back
That's about control.
That's a good comment.
It's really about control.
Yeah, that's a good comment, Crescent. I happened to take a pack trip this year up in the Humboldt, and I had my son with me. It was high school graduation present, and tons of sagebrush up there. And he's like, "Dad, what are those?" And I said, "Those are sagebrush. Sagebrush. Those are sage grouse." And he's like, "I thought those were supposed to be getting extinct and stuff." And he said, "Do your thing." I said, "Well, start counting them and let me know how many you count by the time we get up to camp." And there was tons of them and stuff.
Well, that was my question: is who's doing the count? Who's doing the census on those? Because if there's one thing that scares the crap out of me when I'm hunting, it's the sage grouse. Everywhere I go, they fly up. They scare me to death because they're so loud. But who's doing the count, and how is that being officiated?
They don't have a count. No, they can't tell you right now how many birds are in this state or in the greater western area that they're trying to protect right now. Part of it, they don't have a count on it.
Right now, there's 60 million acres identified for this habitat. 60 million acres.
Gentlemen, if I'm beating the same horse, I apologize, but going on to getting the land released, right now we have wide open hunting abilities.
Yeah.
I'm from Louisiana, so we can kind of agree here. Louisiana is hard to hunt. Everything's private land.
Yeah.
Will it release the ability to the state, the county, or whatever to open up land to go towards hunting leases? If I wanted to take a piece of Mount Charleston, per se, Coal Creek, where is that going to open it up to that ability to where my restrictions are coming against me now?
Yeah, I've got an opinion on that. Go ahead.
Okay, AB 267, right? 267.
Yeah.
We actually started down the south working with Ken Ivory on this bill, but then we turned it over. Thought it was better to let Pete Gokachia and John Ellison take control of this. What AB 267 does, it takes a group of all the county commissioners and folks like that. We're not necessarily don't need to get everything out into private hands. Not everybody wants all the land, but we have an opportunity to let the state manage those areas for livestock and work closely here, rather than having some guy from Louisiana show up out here to be my biologist and say, "Hell, nothing can live out here because you're not from here. You don't understand." There's plenty of thriving out there. So in the state's hand, it helps keep that environmental type control here locally to say what works best here in the West is not like it is in the East Coast. So it keeps those areas by choosing this AB 267. Only particular lands will go before the board, and it will be said, this is what we put out onto auction for private lands. The first thing we've got to do is get it out of the federal government's hand, and the rest, let's leave it here for posterity.
But what I'm saying, I apologize, but what I'm saying in Louisiana, it's set up like that. The oil rigs, the paper companies, the tree companies, they come in, they lease the land. Then they release it to where you as a private citizen can come in and lease their property. Sure. And now it's restrict my access again. You know, I came west because it's open. I hunt with Mike Ireland and Shannon Ireland in Wyoming. We hunt Utah. We hunt here. It's open. We have the ability to hunt. I'm just afraid that if we do this, my ability to hunt is going to go away. My daughters won't have the ability to hunt unless I get with somebody that's really rich and I somehow get in with these guys and I get on a hunting lease.
Sure, you can answer that. You can answer that.
And I agree with you. Mark started his speech off as you may not like politics, but politics is going to find you. And that's what he was leading to is whether you want to or not, most of the people in this room, they just want to apply for a deer tag and I want to go deer hunting. Yep. I mean, let's be real. But what's going to happen when you go to that area and find out, what do you mean I can't hunt here? So that's the reason for the political action to help oversee that so it doesn't get to that point. You've got good examples. You've seen what could happen if it goes to that. So those are the type of people who have to step forward, not in the background, come up front and voice their concerns and their opinions. And I can tell you, most of them, I don't care if it's a Republican or Democrat, if you're intelligent about the subject, they will sit and listen to you.
Well, and go back to what Chris said, there is a task force, Land Management and Transfer Task Force, that was created this last legislative session that is looking at all these issues. And you know what's going to happen ultimately at the end of the day, let's say that they're able to get this on, Nevadans will make a policy decision through their representatives in terms of how we're going to manage that land, right? Nevadans will. And, you know, are there risks? Sure, but I will take that any day. We're trying to deal with somebody from Washington, D.C. managing our lands. But your points are legitimate. We need to talk about them, vet them, and make sure that we don't have a problem with them. Yeah.
Jay, I know he used Nebraska as one of his speech. I hunt in Nebraska quite often.
Yeah.
And the CRP land is very, very limited. It's all private land. The CRP that they set up for you to hunt that's open for the public is very tiny.
Yeah.
So I can see that happening if the state does take it. What stops our lawmakers from going and selling it to privatized companies and people?
Texas.
Yeah. The answer is you do,
cannot.
right?
Yeah.
You do. Because if this happens, listen, I pray and hope and I work my guts out to give the state an opportunity to control our own destiny now, as you know, and be a sovereign as opposed to the federal government doing it. But people like you and me, and all of us are going to have to go up and say, look, as we manage these lands, here's how we want to manage, right? We want so much of the state control or the county control. We don't want everything, but you know, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a representative form of government, right? It's the greatest system of government we have in the entire world. It's not perfect. Doesn't always work exactly right, but it's the greatest system of government we have in the world. So we, the people, have got to make sure that our representatives represent us. And if they don't, then shame on us, you know. We got to make sure. That's our system of government. That's what Mike's talking about, you know. We got to get actively involved in this. But boy, I'll take that all day long. I'll take that burden all day long. And I think there's enough like-minded people to where.
What are your guys' thoughts if you were voted into office on privatizing the land?
Here's my thought. There are certain areas that definitely need to be privatized that are actually good for economic development, good taxable property. Those other areas, being fifth-generation son of farm ranchers, there's no way that my father would have wanted to pay taxes or own a piece of property, almost 1,100 to 1,200 square miles of property. Now, that's ridiculous, you know. But it was a BLM lease. Everybody still has the right to do it. The state can still put those leases out to those farm ranchers, still run those grazing permits to make sure they're not overgrazed or undergrazed. When people know they have the opportunity to have a long-term lease on that property for grazing only, ranchers still aren't buying it, and they're not keeping people off hunting. As long as you play fair with them, close their gates, don't leave things open, it's like anybody else. You know, they don't have a problem with it, and they're not going to fight that issue. So that's what this land council will do. That's what you folks will set up in this process. But in my opinion, I want to make sure that I leave as much as possible for the wildlife, but I also want wildlife, livestock, and agriculture things still to work together. Like I said, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, you read stories about the grouse. The clouds, the sky was like dark clouds with sage grouse because they had opened up some of those areas. So, you know, farming and stuff work hand in hand together, but people still have their right to hunt and need to maintain that.
And my own priority is around developed, populated areas. I mean, that to me would be the first priority. You know, because give the example of Pumpkin Hollow. I mean, that is right outside. I mean, literally outside of Yerington, within a quarter mile. Why does the federal government own all that land a quarter mile outside of Yerington? Well, why? You know, just look at we're surrounded by BLM land here, right? I mean, you know, there are definite discussions and I think legitimate points in terms of we got to make sure we keep recreational hunting and open. And I'm a big fan of all that kind of stuff. But let's start with why did they own so much land right around a populated area?
You got to understand, while we disagree with having large portions of Nevada put off as wilderness by the federal government, we'll equally disagree by large portions of Nevada being given over to large ranches that now exclude the public and get a secondary income that can be
pretty substantial by bull tags and cow tags, and they sell these things for $10,000, $20,000
Right.
So it really doesn't matter to me who puts a boot in my ass to keep me off the land, whether it's the federal government with the wilderness area or a rancher who now has 500,000 acres. And he's not going to want 500,000 acres on the top beach. He's going to want it down where winter feed is and fawn ground and calving ground is. And that's the land that, if this isn't done right, and privatized, once again, the citizen gets to sit at the gate line. I don't want to be Texas. I don't want to be Kansas. I don't want to be Nebraska. I don't want to have to get 10 of my friends together and pay $5,000 a year so we can have a 200-acre honeymoon. So that's not what Nevada is about. That's not what West is about. Those big ranches to begin with, we get that. Now the government's got it. There's got to be a balance for the people because I'm tired of lying.
But I just want to say something, Joy. I agree with you on that 100%. There's no need, and I don't think that's, as long as this coalition continues to grow, you're going to be the mouthpiece for how things are set up. But here's what happens. 60 million acres right now is being put forth for the federal government to turn into wilderness. Now, they can talk about hunting rights and the whole 9 yards, but after it goes through Congress, there's no more congressional talk. Now it becomes administrative order. Watched it. Soldier Meadows up north along the Oregon border. It started off as a wilderness area with grazing and the whole 9 yards. Administrative order. Closed roads, keeps people from fixing fences, cut off waters. You can't even hardly get access to places like that. And I would rather have that opportunity with the people in Nevada going after state legislators than you having to think you're going to go back to Congress and talk to people that are going to ignore you completely. So that's
You don't like either side of the coin.
Yeah, I'll just say that I'm a states' rights guy. I'm a 10th Amendment guy. I think those kind of decisions belong in the states rather than the federal government. And we'll manage it much better here. But everything you're talking about and everybody's talking about in terms of let's make sure that we don't shut this down for hunting and recreation. I couldn't agree more with you.
And I'll make my last point. Some of the people, probably most people in this audience don't know it.
Thank you.
This last year, thank you guys. This last year, Nevada has a sportsman's caucus now.
Right.
Which is Republicans and Democrats at the same table to start talking about the issues we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes here. So that's a start. They've heard it, they understand it. Again, the thing is to stay active on it.
Matter of fact, I think every member of the
Everybody but one.
Every one is in that sportsman's caucus.
Yes. Yeah. So what he's saying is every senator and every legislator that got voted into office, was in office last year, signed that sportsman's caucus, but one. Okay?
Stage ground.
Yeah.
The biggest problem there is the predator.
Yeah.
And the first predator on the stage here is the
Oh, yeah.
The state has the state protects the bird, right?
Right. Yeah.
The state owns the land, they also own the predator.
Yeah. So predator control is a problem, right? So the raven is protected, and that's a natural predator.
They did a study in '82 in Stillwater. They built 100 artificial nests, and the raven destroyed 99.
Yeah. That's right.
So they're protecting a bird. That's why the state did
There's one other thing that's probably, I think, as big as the raven, which I agree with you. That's the wildfires that's been going across the state of Nevada over the last 10 years.
Taking the cattle out.
Taking the cattle. That is the best fire suppression system there is. Cattle eat the noxious weeds that everybody talks about we don't want, and to clean out the weeds and stuff that leave it open areas or closed areas for sage grouse to grow across.
They've already used the turtles, now they're going for sage.
And yes, isn't that interesting? I've been around tortoise all my life.
life.
There's no more or less tortoise today than there was. But interesting, all of a sudden now, I can't go adopt a tortoise unless I spayed or neutered it. Now, is that interesting? And it's all right for me to pay my $650 fee to develop a piece of ground, I can kill it if I pay the $650. So it's never made any sense.
You can tell Preston got up real fast when he started talking predators. So, what I'm trying to point out is we have a lot of politicians that are knowledgeable on the subjects. And it's taking the time to sit and research it and listen to them. And like they said, you can call them up, you can send them emails, they will eventually get back to you and address the concerns. I can guarantee you it's not the first time they've heard it though. We've had a very good impact with this last year, knocking on everybody's door in Carson City and saying, hey, sit down and talk to us. I don't know, Kes just left. I don't think we were not allowed in anybody's office, whether it was a Republican or a Democrat. So as we came up, we wanted to talk about wildlife. Basically, every one of them welcomed them in, as long as their schedule wasn't completely full. But if we would make an appointment and come in, nobody turned us away. So watch our Facebook page, like it, and look at our website. It's extremely educational. We did that website as a library so that these guys, without having to call anybody up and ask, could go read about the stuff. And it's the facts. Just like I handed them $409 million. I don't know that there's very many of the legislators and senators that understand how much money us as sporting families generate in the state of Nevada. So with that, unless anybody's got any other questions, I'm going to thank you guys for coming. Oh, Robert?
Yeah, he forgot me.
Mike?
I'm president of the Nevada Wildlife Federation.
Yeah.
The oldest conservation education group in the state of Nevada. We've been here over 65 years. As regards to the sage grouse, there's more than one problem with the sage grouse. We have drought, we have fires, we have horses, burros, ravens, all those other things are all combined to cause a problem with the sage grouse. Not only that, but Southern Nevada Water District is trying to run a pipeline down through all that area they're working on. Yeah, a piece in the paper guy just sent me from Reno about that. I didn't even know we were going to talk about sage grouse, or I'd have brought it. But there's more than just that problem with the sage grouse, the ravens and that. In some of the states where hunting has been disallowed, there has been no change in the sage grouse population, pro or con. So when it comes to sage grouse, you got to be awful careful. That's all.
Dick, President, go ahead.
You're absolutely right, and that's back again. Government closest to the people is the best government. Let us manage it. We are close to it. We understand the issues. We've got to have the authority to do that. And I agree with all those different things that cause the problem. The multitudes of problems to the state. So that's why it's so important. And I'm going to add one thing that I really think is important, or what's in my mind there, what exactly I was trying to get at. But this group right here needs to continue to grow and expand and make sure that everybody's doing what has to happen, but also happening. Really becomes a norm, an extension. What I'm trying to get at is what we did this year for the first time in the state legislature. I worked with myself, Aaron Kirkpatrick, on the other side. We got together and we developed what we call the Southern Nevada Coalition. It brought all the senators together from both parties, all assembly groups together, and it continued to work. And we did work on issues that were good for the state of Nevada, and we stayed away from issues that we know we're never going to agree on. We had a great session, I think, this last year. We didn't do a lot of harm, but we did a lot of good either. That's better. I think the same thing needs to happen for this coalition right here. Once you get this body completely together, you invite all the people here and have your issues you want to discuss them in the interim. What do you want? What do you want to accomplish? What bills? Educate the people that are not as educated, and it helps you get your stuff passed through. We're going to pass a bill this next time, even though I won't be there. I think we're ready to go because the work is completely developed the Southern Nevada delegation. And I don't know if you read about it or not, but there's 150 to 200 people involved in that process, business people. And I think we're going to have some good jobs.
I just want to ask you guys to remember your oath of office. Could you email me? When you go in there, you all know there's a difference between right and wrong. You all know that.
Hi, Jay. Hi, baby. What? Ah, long day.